I'm George Christensen, and this was my biggest regret. Those of you who know me know that I am the editor of nationfirst.substack.com. Please go over there and subscribe to my newsletter. While you're at it, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click the little bell to get more alerts when we've got news on the Great Reset and other matters to share with you. But more important than all of that, I served for something like 11 years as an Australian federal member of parliament. During that time, I got to witness the internal machinations of government and politics. It's an ugly business, let me tell you. And sadly, in the last couple of years, I also got to witness my nation deteriorate into this tyrannical, medico-tyrannical rule where human rights and freedoms were usurped in the name of protecting us from a virus that had a 0.27% infection fatality rate. I was one of those politicians who wasn't afraid of sticking his head above the parapets on many different issues. And when you do that, you tend to get some pot shots. But I'd never experienced anything as ferocious as what come to me when I started speaking up about COVID-19.
When will the madness end? How many more freedoms will we lose due to fear of a virus, which is a survivability rate of 997 out of 1,000. It's time we stop spreading fear.
The House condemns the comments of the member for Dawson prior to question time designed to use our national parliament to spread misinformation and undermine the actions of Australians to defeat COVID.
Open society back up. Restore our freedoms. End this madness.
Rare for the federal government and opposition to agree, but the coalition supported a Labor motion to condemn Nationals MP George Christensen for spreading misinformation around the pandemic.
Lockdowns don't work. Fact, lockdowns don't destroy the virus, they do destroy people's livelihoods and people's lives.
The coalition's outrage merchant at it again.
Fact. We are all human beings. Nobody should be restricted from everyday life because of their medical choices, especially when vaccinated people can still catch and spread COVID-19.
Don't listen to George Christensen. He's not a doctor. He can't tell you what to do with vaccines.
Domestic vaccine passports are a form of discrimination.
Go to the credible sources' information on vaccines, and George Christensen is not one of them.
Also against the medical advice, refusing to vaccinate children against COVID, something that's been suggested by the government's own MP, George Christensen. Scott Morrison calling out his views as dangerous.
I think they're unwise views. I think they're dangerous views. I don't think parents should be listening to them.
Our posturing politicians, many over there, the sensationalist media elite and the dictatorial medical bureaucrats need to recognise these facts and stop spreading fear.
On George Christensen, I don't think I could have been any clearer yesterday. Don't listen to George Christensen. He's not a doctor. He can't tell you what to do with vaccines.
What we should never accept is a systematic removal of our freedoms based on a zero-risk health advice from a bunch of unelected medical bureaucrats.
His views are not the government's views. They have in no way whatsoever influenced government policy at all. And the greater attention people give to his views, which is not the government, then I can only encourage those to simply ignore him.
The House calls on all members to refrain from making ill-informed comments at a time when the pandemic represents a serious threat to the health of Australians.
In the parliament that makes laws, George Christensen calls on voters to break them in protest against vaccine mandates and what he sees as state overreach.
George Christensen is a menace to public health. There should be no place for him in the government party.
I'm feeling desperate. I'd like to turn to the Australian government in Canberra and in particular George Christensen for advice.
Those comments were appalling, and I've spoken to George directly about them. I think they're absolutely appalling.
With all that was thrown at me from the left side of politics, from my own side of politics, from the mainstream media, you think that I would regret standing up and speaking out. You think that I'd regret putting my head above the parapets. I don't regret any of that. My nation was descending into this medico tyranny, as I said. It was quite clear that there was something greater than just COVID that was going on, something greater. It was like that there was a controlling force behind this that was using this pandemic to get to the people. That's what concerned me. But what was my regret. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I actually went to this inquiry that was organised by Senator Malcolm Roberts in Australia. He's a great man. And Senator Roberts organised a number of different parliamentarians, politicians from all different parties to come together and have this informal inquiry into COVID-19. And during that inquiry, I was talking in camera, that is in confidence, with these people who showed some slides, and they showed things that they saw under a microscope. And I was alarmed. I was alarmed when I heard what they had said, when they showed the footage. And I said to them, I need to come and see this for myself. And so they took me. These people took me to their laboratory. And so these weren't just everyday Joes. These people were involved in the health industry. One of the people that was there vouching for them was a pathologist herself. And when we went into their laboratory, they took me through the whole chain of custody. There was nothing that happened that was untoward. So these people took me to a fridge where they extracted a vial of a certain substance that I can't name on social media, and that tells you as much as you need to know about the powers that be and what's going on here. But anyway, they put a needle inside this vial. All of this happened right in front of me, by the way. They extracted the substance out of this vial. They'd gotten the substance from a doctor who, again, didn't want his name mentioned, didn't want any identification happening to him. And that, again, tells a very big story. But they extracted this substance from this vial. And then they went and proceeded to go to a dark field microscope where they put this vial, the substance in this vial, on a slide. And then I was shown what was in this substance. And what I saw, I just couldn't explain. So I had no idea what the hell that was, but it was geometric shaped. It seemed to be giving off energy, and it seemed to be moving, forming, building things. And this is something that was in a substance that was being recommended people take. People have injected into them to protect them. It was supposed to be safe and effective. What the hell was this substance? I got to tell you, folks, that I was extremely scared at this point in time. I'd just been burdened with this horrid information, and it didn't stop there. These people went and proceeded to show me slides of blood from people that had the substance injected into them. What I saw in that blood was hard to describe. It was like there was shears in the blood, like something strange was going on. It wasn't just like it was clotting or coagulating. It was like there was something else in it that the blood was reacting to. So I phoned a doctor friend of mine and I said to him, look, I'm going to put you on video phone and I want you to see what I'm seeing right here. He couldn't believe it either when he saw the blood and when he saw what was in that vial. And he said to me about the blood, that looks like it's blood that is inflamed. I said, how do you get inflamed blood? He says there'd have to be some pretty serious treatments that were needed to get inflamed blood. And I said these people weren't people that had serious treatments. These were people that were injected with a certain substance. He just couldn't believe it. There, I'd seen it with my own eyes. I had to believe it. And it was shortly after this, when I was telling a few trusted people, that someone said to me, you need to shut up about this, because if what you saw is right and you have this information now and you can bring it to light, you might end up dead before you do it. Your family might end up dead. Be very careful. I got to tell you, I was incredibly frightened, more than I ever have been before, because of this information. Look, this was well after about 96% of Australians had gone out and gotten what the government was recommending that they get. So it wasn't like me revealing this information could suddenly stop what had already happened from happening. But nonetheless, I should have said something. Now I'm making it right. I saw something in those vials which defies common sense. It defies logic even. So there's now questions that need to be answered. How did we get to this point where we were injecting into people this substance that had these structures in it that I saw? How is it that there's been this massive cover-up about the state of blood of people who've been injected with this substance? I don't understand how this is all being covered up, although the mainstream media has the ability to do that. We know that time and again. But yes, as I said before, there's some greater power that's been behind this whole pandemic. And who knows, is it the World Economic Forum? Is it Klaus Schwab and all of his mates that are pulling the strings here? The Bill Gates of the world? How did this guy become this expert in viruses? This guy who said that if we do a good enough job at vaccines that we can lower the world population. Is it all about lowering the world population? I don't know, folks, but what I know is that there are questions that need to be answered. And what I know is that my greatest regret was not saying something about what was in those vials and what was in the blood sooner. I'm sorry.